May we call this meeting to order? We have a quorum. I'm not sure we have much more than a quorum. That one helps. There we go. Alan Dick and Paul Bailey. Okay. All right, if we can begin, welcome members of the public and media and counselors and staff to our second meeting of this term of the Environment and Services Committee. First thing we should do is, I guess, any notices or apologies from anyone?
I have an apology. I'm going to have to leave at 2:15. The Hawke's Bay economy is going so well, we can't get a flight out of here tomorrow morning.
I'll note one for Paul Bailey, had a small family emergency, so he'll be absent for maybe a bit at the beginning of this meeting, but is intending to come back. Any other notices or apologies? Do we have to resolve to accept all of that? May I have a motion?
I'll move my apologies.
Okay. Peter?
I'll move with Marcus.
All right. Now, we are going to exercise our authority to have a special business item on here, which is the appointment of an interim chief executive. First order of business is actually to simply pass a resolution that where the councilors accept that as an addition to today's agenda, and if we move and second that, we can proceed.
I will second it.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Before we act on that matter, we need to deal with any additional conflict of interest declarations. Are there any today? Not already on register? Hear none? We can move on from that. We don't have to do anything about that. All right, so now let's turn to the, everybody I think has a piece of paper in front of them which describes what we have done to make this appointment. I'm going to ask, though, Rex to just elaborate a bit on what the process was and what we have resolved to do. Then we will pass a resolution from this committee recommending that we make the appointment, assuming there's agreement to do so. And then we will need to pass a further resolution where we are basically voting as the full council to accept that recommendation. And for the appointment to be made today, there would need to be unanimous agreement to that second resolution. So that's the process we're going to follow. Rex, do you want to just describe briefly how we got to
Yes, thank you, Chair. I will. As everyone's aware, our Chief Executive, Mr. Newman, is resigning, which is effective from the end of this month. And we are going into a process of finding a new Chief Executive. That will take some time, and in the meantime, we needed an interim Chief Executive to keep the seat warm, so to speak. We went out and we looked out into the community, and we were very fortunate to find two very able candidates who could have done this job, and we had a selection committee which was recommended from this council. We interviewed and we went into a series of interviews of both parties, and they were both outstanding candidates. We went for Mr. Woodham for two reasons. One, he was already doing contractual work for the council, so was in the building already and well aware of, becoming aware of how we worked. He was very well qualified. He has a lot of extensive experience in the corporate world. He has a BCom and is a chartered accountant. I think it's BCom. Nevertheless, he is a chartered accountant with extensive experience, and we thought he was the perfect person to take this role on an interim basis whilst we went out and got a new chief executive. It was a unanimous decision from the committee delegated to do the job. We'll have to take any questions.
Any other councillor who was part of that process here to comment? Was that
I
it?
think so.
Nope.
Just leave it.
Any councillors have any other comments or they'd like to make? If not, someone would move the first of our resolutions, please.
I'll move that.
Rick has moved that. Rex has seconded it. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. And now, to make this totally official, we have to have a additional vote, which I suspect will be unanimous, given the last vote. All those in favor of appointing Mr. Greg Woodham as the interim chief executive, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No.
You have a mover and second?
Who was the mover?
I'll move it.
Move it?
I'll second.
You'll second it? All those in favor? Aye. Okay, we're kosher. Greg is sitting in the back here. Greg, would you like to just come up and say a couple of words, introduce yourself?
And, we're particularly interested in your
Do I need to start again? Yes, I grew up around Hastings, Havelock North, studied at Otago University, worked in Wellington for a few years, went overseas for 3 or 4 years, and then the last 25 years was in Wellington as a chartered accountant and in various industries, property development and manufacturing, but spent 23 years at an organisation called Data Mail, which became Datum, and that started with one customer and about 40 staff, and at the end of the 23 years had almost 2,000 staff in Australia and New Zealand, and over $200 million turnover. And during that time, those 23 years, I was always the chief financial guy, but in latter years was responsible for property, legal, HR, and anything else that the other guys didn't want to get involved in. I was restructured out of that job 5 years ago, which was a good thing. Moved to Hawke's Bay, and have had up until August about 4.5 years at Hohepa down in Clive as the Hawke's Bay Sustainability Manager, which was responsible for the finances, the farm, the cheesery and the shop. And also in the last 2 years there, I was the national sort of Hohepa accountant, because they're a national organisation, which not a lot of people understand, but it's so for 2 years I was wearing the national hat. I left there 8 months ago, and I've got a small vineyard on the Tukituki Valley, just 10 acres. So I've been spending a bit more time on there than I've done up till that stage, and also doing a little bit of contracting work around and about. And most recently started here 2.5 weeks ago, on an efficiency and effectiveness review, just to assist the new councillors and some of the older councillors to better understand how the operation sort of hangs together, and whether there are things that we are doing that we don't need to do, or and those things that we are doing, whether we're doing them as well as can be. Is that?
By this resolution, Greg's appointment is officially takes effect on April 3rd. Assuming his responsibilities at that point. Thank you, Greg.
You're welcome to stay
Okay. So do I turn this off, do I? Or?
December. So if we go through, any corrections on page 2, page 3, page 4, 5, 6, no corrections to the minutes. Will somebody move to accept them as correct? Mr. Bailey, seconded by Councillor Wilson over there. Mr. Bevan, okay. Any matters arising from those minutes? Wow, okay. Do we have to have a resolution on that? No. Okay. Yeah, all right, now we're on to agenda item 4, follow-up from previous committee meetings. And who is online for that?
Could I raise a point of order first?
Be my guest.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be invited to raise a point of order. I noticed that there's been a change in the way these things are being presented, the way that these papers are now being signed off. I've always noticed that they have had more signatures to them in the Treaty of Versailles, which has intrigued me on occasions. But in the past, I'm starting from the point of Councillor Dick, who said that the agenda is controlled absolutely by the Chief Executive, that no one else can have hands on the agenda. And so therefore we've always had the papers put forward by the Chief Executive. Now it seems to me that the Chief Executive's signature is not on this, and so if we have a disagreement with it or the quality, who do we have, does the council hold to account for it? Because we do not employ, technically, the staff directly ourselves. The council only employs the Chief Executive. So I'm just wondering about the status of these things, and is this meaning that if we can have anybody's signature on these to put them on, can anybody put papers on the agenda? It's the only pathway to the agenda in the past has been the Chief Executive, and the council has been able to hold the Chief Executive to account because it is their paper. At the moment, this is not paper, and none of them here belong effectively to the Chief Executive. So it's a technical point, I know, but
Mr.
it's
Chairman,
an important one.
Mr. Chairman, I think the answer to that is that the Chief Executive takes responsibility for the council agenda. This is a committee meeting, in which case the principal serving officer and the chairperson of that committee.
And I believe we amended
collaborate.
our standing orders specifically to that point, that the chairman of the relevant committee would be the appropriate checkpoint, I guess, if you will, on settling what the agenda items would be for that chairman's committee meeting.
The other pathway
Is that
for
everybody's
councillors-
understanding?
But who is ultimately responsible for?
Well, I take it to mean that I am with respect to this committee meeting. I'm responsible for the agenda coming before you today.
That's true, but then who's responsible for the papers? So normally someone who submits a paper is the person who takes responsibility for it, and because it's been the Chief Executive in the past.
Are you trying to shed some light?
Just to try and be helpful here, Chair, bit of business to get through. I think the answer quite simply is my understanding of it now and in the past is, in this instance, Mr. Adey as manager does it under delegation from the Chief Executive. There's no... And Mr. Maxwell, yeah. So I'm struggling to see, and I need to go back through here and have a look, Chief Executive's signature on any of the committee papers. Ever. Could stand corrected,
Ever.
but I don't. Not on committee papers. Council papers, but not here.
But council papers
have that debate in 2 weeks.
I want to know who owns it.
I believe it's owned by the person signing it,
Chair,
which is
if
clear in every case.
If
So
I,
let's
if
move
I may,
on.
just to be helpful, hopefully, for the committee, it's not true that anyone can put a paper to the committee in terms of staff. So the practice is that that relevant group managers that are assigned to committees, and you've just heard who the two are for this committee. My responsibility is RPC, for example, that we are responsible for determining the agenda with the chair, and we are effectively the gatekeepers in terms of what papers go through. So that is the practice at the present time.
Mr. Chair, I think it's very obvious that Judy Buttery is responsible for the paper.
May I continue? You voiced your displeasure with the arrangement. Okay. Can we go through these follow-ups? Number one, I don't think needs any explanation. We are recording the meeting as we speak, and that expenditure will be further reviewed in our normal budget planning process for the coming year. Number two, Mr. Adie.
Yeah, I've said there to be integrated with the asset management plans. Obviously, this will fall under Graham, so that's how we propose to handle that. We will be doing quite a significant review of our service delivery operations as part of that whole asset management planning process, so I think it's appropriate that that's included under there.
Okay. Number three, I see all councillors present, so I'm assuming we all found our car parks so that issue is resolved. Number four, update on feedlot compliance.
Yes, through you, Chair. So we'll bring you back a fulsome update in May. We're still in the sort of later stages of the finalisation of the process and the activities in preparation for this winter. So the best time to bring you that back when it's complete is in May, which we'll do.
Okay. Any questions on any of those?
I have a question, just on the feedlots, Ian, on your update review. Is it true that grain-fed cattle, which is basically feedlots, are more prone, are in fact are the only cattle that have E. coli?
No, so E. coli
So you
are a bacteria in the guts of pretty much every warm-blooded animal. So and they're part of a natural gut flora, so you need them. If you don't have them, there's a problem. And so feed type doesn't typically have a significant impact on whether they're present or absent. It'll just alter the relative proportions of different flora within the gut, but they're always present.
So it was propaganda I was reading.
Alternative facts.
Councillor Bailey?
Through you, Chair, I take your point, Ian, about why you want to give us an update on the May meeting. However, I note from the consents received reports, there's a couple of new consents for feedlots down in Central Hawke's Bay that have come up. Is it at all possible to give a very brief report on where we're up to with where the feedlot issue is up to with, say, at the next full council meeting, or it doesn't have to be a full report like you're intending in May?
Through you, Chair, happy to give you a verbal update on where we're at. That includes progress made and perhaps just reflecting you are seeing applications come through the system now, reflecting that landowners are taking on board those messages and are looking to do the right thing.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think it remains a topic of public interest. So that's all good.
Ian, if I could add to that, these couple that have come in, are these new? Are these folks who now are realizing that they have an operation that needs to be consented, or are these?
As I understand it, but Mr. Bailey had asked that question via email, and I'm just getting clarification of that, and I'll let you all know. But as I understand it, they are new. The activities that have existed but are now going to be under a consenting regime.
Okay. No further discussion of that. Can we move on to call for items of business not on the agenda? Bailey? Mr. Bailey?
Local Government New Zealand Zone 3 meeting.